Thank you for joining us today. We are thrilled to be able to present this update, during which we will build on an oral presentation at ASCO of our phase 1 ADP-A2M4 trial and set expectations going forward, including that we're moving into late-stage development in a new indication, esophagogastric junction cancer. I would refer you to the press release we issued this morning for more details and the disclaimers regarding forward-looking statements, which are also outlined here. Many of you will remember us as a small company with efficacy in sarcoma with a single asset, NY-ESO, under option to GSK. In May last year, we reported compelling efficacy in synovial sarcoma with ADP-A2M4, a first-generation SPEAR T-cell targeting MAGE A4. We also reported encouraging anti-tumor activity, but no responses in multiple other cancer indications. We set out to convert this anti-tumor activity into RECIST responses, initiating a radiation sub-study and the next generation SURPASS trial. In January, we reported our first RECIST responses outside of sarcoma in our MAGE A4 targeting program in head and neck cancer, esophagogastric junction cancer, and melanoma, and also a partial response in liver cancer from our ADP-A2 AFP program. Today, we have announced additional new RECIST responses with our SPEAR T-cells targeting MAGE A4 in lung, esophagogastric junction, and head and neck cancers. We also announced today that the ADP-A2 AFP patient with liver cancer who had a partial response in January is now a complete responder, and Elliot will update you about this trial. David Hong's ASCO presentation includes further data validating the depth and durability of our signal in synovial sarcoma. Based on these data, we believe that the SPEARHEAD-1 trial can be used for registration, and we have removed the futility analysis, reducing the number of patients from 60 to 45. Screening is progressing well, and we have identified over 30 patients who have the right HLA and whose tumor expresses MAGE A4. We also have had productive interactions with regulatory authorities, and the totality of this progress supports our ambition to launch our first commercial product in sarcoma in the US in 2022. Dr. Hong's presentation also includes non-sarcoma patients dosed in the phase 1 trial with ADP-A2M4. These are shown here together with the one patient dosed to date in the radiation sub-study of this trial. And on the next line, the patients dosed in the SURPASS trial with our next generation MAGE A4 targeting SPEAR T-cell, ADP-A2M4 CD8. I would remind you that both of these therapies target MAGE A4 using the same T-cell receptor. And across these indications, it's clear that we have a broad range of responses with SPEAR T-cell monotherapy in late-stage cancer patients. We have a 50% response rate in synovial sarcoma, and these data are the basis for our phase 2 trial SPEARHEAD-1, which we intend to use for registration and commercialization in 2022. We have also seen encouraging responses in head and neck cancer, with 2 out of the 4 patients dosed responding across both the phase 1 and SURPASS trials. On the basis of these responses and translational evidence of upregulation of PD-L1 following SPEAR T-cell administration in other patients, we are initiating SPEARHEAD-2, a phase 2 combination trial with ADP-A2M4 and pembrolizumab in patients with head and neck cancer. This will be the first time that our SPEAR T-cells are used in sequence with first-line systemic therapy. In January this year, we reported one response in esophagogastric junction cancer in our SURPASS trial. Today, we report a second unconfirmed response, and with these data, we are planning to initiate a phase 2 trial with our ADP-A2M4 CD8 SPEAR T-cells in esophagogastric junction cancer in the first half of next year. Esophagogastric junction cancer represents a significant unmet medical need. Prognosis is poor, and we are excited to develop this therapy in this setting where unfortunately patients have limited treatment options. Today, we also reported a new confirmed response in lung cancer. This is in one of only 2 patients dosed with our first generation product targeting MAGE A4. And this is the first response in a lung cancer patient with our SPEAR T cells. We have also seen anti-tumor activity in patients with bladder cancer, and we previously announced a melanoma response in our radiation sub-study that continues to enroll. We are incredibly encouraged by the early data from the SURPASS trial, with the first 3 out of 4 patients responding. It's worth noting that 3 of these patients were dosed in the first dose escalation cohort at 1 billion cells. Such responses in early cohorts are unprecedented across our portfolio, and we will share updated data at a congress in the fall. The SURPASS trial continues, and we're focusing enrollment on patients where we have now seen responses or substantial other evidence of activity in our MAGE A4 program, specifically lung, esophagogastric junction, head and neck, and bladder cancers. And with that, I'll turn it over to Elliot Norrie, our Chief Medical Officer, for more clinical detail.
Thanks, Ad, and thank you everyone for taking the time to watch this presentation. Like Ad, I'm thrilled to report these data today and even more excited for the next 6 to 12 months as we accumulate results from additional patients in our trials and aim to progress further indications into late-stage development. On this slide, we present a brief overview of the responses Ad has already described with our SPEAR T cells targeting MAGE A4, including the compelling data in synovial sarcoma, the new response in lung cancer, and the 2 new responses reported today in our SURPASS trial. We are committed to continuing early-stage signal detection trials and enhancing our therapies so as to rapidly identify additional indications that could be advanced to late-stage development. This is the overview of the updated synovial sarcoma data from Dr. David Hong's presentation at ASCO. On behalf of all my colleagues, we want to thank David and all of our investigators for championing our therapies. The top left waterfall plot shows best overall response data from 15 patients with synovial sarcoma who had post-baseline scans at the time of data cutoff. The 16th patient treated has been assessed as an unconfirmed partial response after data cutoff. This results in an overall response rate of 50% for this indication if confirmed. Importantly, the data also clearly show promising durability with a median duration of response of approximately 28 weeks. Of note, 3 out of the 7 responders have continued to benefit as of their 1-year assessment, as you can see on the spider plot on the right. These data are really encouraging, and we truly believe we have the opportunity to change the lives of people with this terrible cancer who have few other treatment options. We want to thank every patient, their families, and caregivers for taking part in our trials. Based on these results, we are even more confident about the potential of our SPEARHEAD-1 trial to be used for registration. We announced today that we removed the futility analysis from our SPEARHEAD-1 trial and decreased the number of patients to be treated from 60 to 45 based on these phase 1 results. Following RMAT and orphan drug designations from FDA, we also received a positive opinion for orphan drug designation from the EMA. Overall, our interactions with regulatory agencies, investigators, and patient groups have been productive and supportive. We are eager to make this therapy available to as many people with sarcoma as we can. This is the summary of the data from non-sarcoma patients, and again, these data are important. For non-sarcoma patients, we have confirmed RECIST responses in both lung and head and neck cancer, as well as evidence of anti-tumor activity in ovarian cancer, bladder cancer, and melanoma. I want to take a moment and pause on the patient with bladder cancer, whom Ad mentioned earlier. This patient, shown in the large red bar in the waterfall plot on the left, had a 67% reduction in target lesions. However, this patient did not have a RECIST response due to progression of brain metastases. This response is what has led us to focus on enrolling more patients with bladder cancer in our ongoing SURPASS trial, alongside other indications in which we have seen responses with our MAGE A4 targeted products. We believe that as we treat more patients with SPEAR T cells targeting MAGE A4, we will identify other indications to pursue in late-stage development. I want to briefly touch on our ongoing ADP-A2-AFP clinical trial. We reported a partial response in January in a patient with hepatocellular carcinoma, or HCC, which has now been assessed as a confirmed complete response. This was the first patient treated at target dose in cohort 3. The next 2 patients in this cohort did not respond. Following requests from investigators, we have opened a cohort for patients with non-HCC tumors that express AFP, and the 1 patient treated in this cohort has also not responded. Although some patients have progressed, I remain encouraged by these early data, and we continue to recruit in the expansion phase of this trial. We will provide an update at the International Liver Congress in August. Safety has always been our key priority. In general, patients have tolerated our treatments well with an acceptable safety profile. We continue to see the adverse events experienced in our trials as manageable and consistent with those typically experienced by cancer patients undergoing cytotoxic chemotherapy and cancer immunotherapy. With that, I will turn it back over to Adrian. Ad?
Thanks, Elliot. Here is an overview of our current pipeline, and I want to take a moment to appreciate how markedly different this is from where we were even a year ago. I don't know of any other cell therapy company that has demonstrated such clear responses, including a complete response, with T-cell monotherapy across a range of solid tumors in patients with late-stage cancer, or that has such a robust pipeline in more than 10 solid tumor indications, including 3 ongoing or planned phase 2 trials. I want to reinforce the following points in our pipeline. Firstly, with 3 patients responding of the first 4 patients dosed, ADP-A2M4CD8 shows the potential to be highly active. We intend to move forward in esophagogastric junction cancer and are planning for a phase 2 study to initiate in the first half of 2021. Secondly, we will now focus the SURPASS trial on indications in which we have seen responses or evidence of anti-tumor activity in our MAGE A4 targeting program: lung, head and neck, esophagogastric junction, and bladder cancer. Thirdly, this year we will initiate our SPEARHEAD-2 trial in head and neck cancer. This is the combination trial of ADP-A2M4 and pembrolizumab, our first trial with SPEAR T cells used in sequence with first-line systemic therapy. And finally, as more patients with MAGE A4 expressing cancers are treated, I'm confident we will be able to identify more indications for late-stage development. Following the January update, we saw an increase in the number of patients screened and enrolled across our trials. COVID-19 has obviously had an impact since then, but we believe that the ASCO data will reinforce physician support, and more recently, we are seeing enhanced engagement with the clinical trial sites as the COVID-19 situation evolves. And although we did not discuss this in detail today, we are continuing our preclinical research. As we recently announced, we have agreed the first collaboration program target with Astellas, and this will be an allogeneic HLA-independent TCR, which we call HIT therapy. This co-development and co-commercialization deal with Astellas is indicative of the company we want to be and the types of deals we want to do going forward. At the beginning of this year, we reported responses with our SPEAR T cells across a range of solid tumors, demonstrating the potential of the platform. We set out in 2020 to identify developable signals so that we can progress indications in addition to sarcoma. We have now accomplished this for the first time as we take ADP-A2M4CD8 into late-stage development in esophagogastric junction cancer. Further, we have encouraging signs in other indications, speaking to the breadth of cancer patients that might benefit from our SPEAR T-cell therapies. The rest of 2020 will be data-rich for us, and we will continue to present updates throughout the year at major medical congresses. The Spearhead-1 trial is progressing well. We remain committed to and confident in launching our first commercial product in 2022. I am very excited for the future of Adaptimmune as we continue to develop this integrated cell therapy company to bring the promise of cell therapies to people with cancer.